Turul's back, already twisted unnaturally over the table's edge, was now forced against its surface, embedded with metal chips. Each pull of the ropes, and each wheel creak, didn't just stretch him. It pressed his flesh against these jagged intrusions. His back was not just being pulled apart, but also being sliced and grated against the coarse edge. Every bit of relief from the wheel's pull, momentary as it was, still offered no escape from the abrasiveness digging into his skin. Rossz, watching intently, couldn't help but notice the added torment inflicted by the metal chips. But he found himself craving more. His eyes slid over the prisoner's muscular chest and chiseled abdomen. They were the crowning aspects of that physique, the product of warrior training for years. Yet, they were untouched, still pristine. If the back was marred by rough metal, then the front could be equally accosted, but with a different stroke of villainy.
The finest cut of meat in my kingdom, prime and ready for seasoning.
The tyrant's words carried a dreadful implication, making it clear that he considers this next act of torment a form of personal indulgence. Two assistant wardens sprang into action, bringing forth a wooden bowl filled with coarse salt and a jug of pungent vinegar, as though they were ingredients in some vile recipe.
Apply it thoroughly.
The king instructed, his voice tinged with sadistic pleasure, as he picked up a handful of the salt and let it run through his fingers.
Even the finest meat requires the most meticulous preparation before cooking.
The first warden soaked a coarse cloth in vinegar, wringing out just enough to saturate without dripping. The second then liberally sprinkled salt onto the fabric, ensuring it was generously coated with the abrasive mixture. Meanwhile, the chief warden, still at his position by the rack's roller, exchanged a knowing glance with his king. With a subtle nod from Rossz, it was clear that their sadistic collaboration in tormenting the prisoner was expertly orchestrated. The grim ritual kicked off as the chief warden turned the roller handle, pulling Turul's body taut against the rack. Once the tension peaked, the two assistants carefully laid the salt and vinegar-soaked cloths on his muscular chest's stretched, unblemished skin, one on each side. They paused momentarily, letting the rough fabric cling to the skin, a prelude to the torment that would soon follow. As the cloths made contact with his stretched skin. A sharp, guttural grunt burst forth from the young rebel's clenched teeth. The sensation was instantaneous, like a searing flash of pain, cutting across his torso, making every muscle fiber contract involuntarily. Then, the room filled with Turul's continuous hisses and grunts, as both wardens began their methodical scrubbing. They moved in sync, their hands exerting the right amount of pressure to grind the salt and vinegar deep into his pores. The coarse fabric bit into his flesh, each scrub, both a physical and psychological assault. Every swipe of the cloth was like sandpaper, grating away his resolve, layer by layer. The chief warden finally loosened the rack's tension. Turul's muscles slackened, but the relief was a twisted mockery of comfort. Removing the abrasive cloths did little to alleviate the burning sensation that had settled deep into the grooves of his muscles. The enslaved hero took shallow, ragged breaths, each inhalation laced with the acrid smell of vinegar, now mingled with his sweat and emanating from his raw flesh. It was a force break, and he braced himself for the next round, even as he wished for an end to the torment. As the rack roller was cranked again, just when the prisoner thought the tension couldn't possibly escalate, the assistant wardens returned. This time, they laid fresh cloths, heavily coated with a new layer of salt and soaked in vinegar, directly onto the chiseled abdomen. Once the cloths made contact, a guttural grunt, longer and louder than before, reverberated through the dank walls of the dungeon. When the wardens began their merciless scrubbing, the voice shifted into a continuous series of hisses and grunts, each louder and more anguished than the last. Even when the chief warden finally eased the tension on the roller, the air remained filled with Turul's tortured vocalizations.
Excellent, Chief. A little culinary expertise goes a long way, doesn't it?
Rossz chuckled, savoring the dark satisfaction of the agonizing cycles they had repeatedly inflicted on that muscular chest and chiseled abdomen. His eyes glinted with fiendish pleasure, as if each of those grunts and hisses were a delectable morsel in a feast of suffering.
This is a lesson to us all.
One slave muttered to another, his voice tinged with disbelief and horrified awe.
A lesson.
Another chimed in, the weight of his words heavy in the dank air of the dungeon.
If this is what he does to Turul, what chance do the rest of us have? Yeah, if I'm next, I hope they make it quick. That
The third gestured vaguely toward the rack.
is worse than death. You think Rossz cares about quick or slow? He's enjoying himself. Look at
said the first slave, his gaze moving from Turul to the king, who seemed almost elated by the ongoing torture.